Hello, true crimerers. This is another true crime in a short amount of time. And this is the case of Deputy Charlie Anderson. Viewer discretion is advised. Real quick before we get started, of course, if you're new to the channel, hello, I'm Mike. I tell true crime stories 3 days a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, so please subscribe, give this video a like so it's pushed out to more people. I also tell short form true crime stories over on Tickle Talk. Ew, don't know why I said it that way, but you can find that in the link tree in the description of this video below. I have close to 3 million or so followers over there, and I post at least one new story a day. I also have a Discord server in that link tree. Be over the age of 18 if you're going to join it, but by all means do so. I sell merch. We ship all over the world. And lastly, if there's a case you want me to cover, please just email me at makingatruecrimerertwo. It's in the description below. Just email me the name of the person, where it happened, when it happened, and I will add it to my list. I can't tell you when exactly I'll cover it. I pick my cases at random, but I will get to it eventually, I promise. Anyway, let's get into today's story. Yeah, no, don't do that, okay. It's January 24th, 1987. Charles Robert Anderson was a 14-year veteran of the Los Angeles Police Department. He was married and he had 2 children. He was described as a fantastic officer, but also just this incredible dad. He loved his kids. He absolutely loved spending time with them. Any opportunity he had, any free time he had was being spent with his children. And he absolutely loved them. By all accounts, he had a really good marriage. They were madly in love with each other. And I'm not exactly sure how long he and his wife were married for. From what I can tell, it was a good marriage. Charlie Anderson was what they described as a really skilled, highly skilled driver. And so what he did a lot at the police department was he trained other officers how to handle themselves in a police vehicle, especially during like some kind of chase, high-speed chase, that kind of thing. And he loved doing it. You could tell he always just enjoyed teaching that kind of thing. But on the night of January 24th, 1987, his life would come to a very sudden end. It was approximately midnight, and he, his wife, and his 2 children, his 2 sons, had just pulled into the driveway of their home. They had attended a family gathering earlier, and they were just coming home from that. From what I understand, his wife, Beth, had some kind of back injury. And because their 5-year-old son had already fallen asleep in the car and their other son was still in a car seat, she wasn't able to lift any of the kids. And so what he did was he would pick up the 5-year-old son. He said, okay, I'll go walk him in and put him in bed first. You stay in here with the baby, and then I'll come back to bring the baby in and, you can come in with us. He wanted her out there to make sure the baby was okay in the car by himself for that brief amount of time. Within minutes, as Beth is sitting in the car, she witnesses Charlie go into the house carrying their 5-year-old sleeping son. A few minutes later, she hears what she describes as a car backfiring. And it caught her by surprise. It was very sudden and loud. And so she kind of panicked and looked around for a minute, didn't see any cars or anything. And she gets out of the car and kind of calls into the house like, Charlie, what's going on? Are you all right? There's no response. And so she decides to, her son's there, in the back, but she decides to go into the house to see if anything is wrong. And she's calling his name, no response. She climbs up the stairs. At first, she doesn't see or hear anything. And then she rounds the stairs because it's it has a rounded corner. And there at the top of the staircase is Charlie. He is on his back and there is blood. Charlie was dead. He had been shot. She freaks out, like this is, ultimate panic mode, and she decides to run down the stairs to go get the baby, and she runs to the next door neighbor. I know her other son was in the house, but I think she was just in panic mode and what do I do? And so she decided to grab the baby, go next door to call 911. When police arrive, Sadly, they confirmed that Charlie Anderson, again a 14-year veteran of the police department, was in fact dead. As they're investigating the house, they don't really see anything necessarily out of place. At first, they're like, okay, so Charlie obviously walked in on someone burglarizing the house and shot him because the burglar got surprised. But nothing was really stolen. I guess they said a couple small things appeared to be stolen, but when they're searching the house, they notice that drawers are pulled out like methodically. Usually in their experience, when they're looking at a house that's been ransacked and robbed, you have drawers dumped out, you got a mess everywhere, but there wasn't a mess. There wasn't anything truly like sorted through and gone through. The drawers were just pulled out almost to make it look like someone had gone through them. But out in the open, very clear as day, and even some on the ground, which would indicate that possibly if it was a burglar, that he or she knocked this item on the ground, there was jewelry. Just very expensive looking jewelry. Necklaces, bracelets, just watches, like stuff that could have sold for something. They didn't take it. There was no money stolen in the house. There was really nothing of value taken at all, other than the life of Charlie Anderson. My other thing, and every story I read, I don't know what the answer to this is, but if Beth heard the gunshot, which she mistook for a car backfiring, and someone was in the house that shot him, did she not see this person leave the house? Because she reacted pretty quickly, and she was literally right there. Like the door was here, and the garage is like over here, and she had a clear view of the front door, but to my knowledge, she never said she saw anyone running out of the house. Maybe there was a back door that the person broke into, and that's where they ran off to. But as far as I know, she did not see or hear anyone else leaving the house. Even when she went in there, she didn't hear anything out of the ordinary, as far as I know. The other thing is there was no forced entry in the house. There was no broken windows, no doors were kicked in, no door frames weren't broken or anything. So you have a crime scene that looks potentially like a staged robbery. You don't have any forced entry. Nobody was a witness seeing the supposed assailant and murderer fleeing the house from any direction. It was after midnight at this point, so people were pretty much asleep. So you wouldn't really expect many people to see this kind of thing anyway. But no one came forward later to say they saw someone entering the home or anything. There was no witnesses to any of this. They dusted the entire house top to bottom for fingerprints. They only found fingerprints that belonged to the family. That is it. Which told them that either the killer wore gloves, which is very possible, or the person who did this was someone close to home. Charlie's sister, I believe her name is Trish, she said she was there. She was called to the house the night of the murder, and after he was killed, and to help identify his body. And she said when she looked at him, he had this this facial reaction kind of permanently on him of shock, of like betrayal, is what she said. That he had this it was like whoever did this, he saw and was shocked by it. I don't know if that's how it works. Can someone tell me if that's how it works? Like when a person is killed, does their facial expression stay the same? I'm curious about that. When I saw that, I was like, is that even a thing? So her and the family, Charlie's family, they kind of lean more towards that this was actually done by someone that Charlie probably knew. That this wasn't a random home invasion, that he was shot and killed by someone and it was personal. But who could that have been? Well, it isn't known. Police did interview Beth the night of the murder, but here's the thing. Ever since that night, she refused to talk to police after that. Not saying she's guilty of anything, but that is definitely kind of a strange thing to say, like, no, I'm not talking to you. Why not? Your husband was murdered. Literally, almost literally in front of you. You think you'd want to have someone get the killer caught, right? But she didn't talk to him. She would end up remarrying very soon after that. Did police look into her and her new husband? I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I know at one point they did consider Beth a suspect, but they never presented any evidence or anything like that to actually file charges against her or her new husband or boyfriends or whatever. It doesn't sound like they really ever found anything on her. A few months later, and just a couple blocks away from Charlie's house where he was killed, a woman named Carol Motecalvo was killed in her home. She was shot and killed in what appeared to be an assumed robbery gone wrong. Everything about it looked very similar to the Charlie Anderson case. And so police at first were like, okay, this is connected. But then they would end up finding out that the person who killed Carol was her husband, Dan. Did police look into Dan as being responsible for Charlie's murder? First of all, they found no connections between them. There was no link that they could find, and it didn't appear that the murders were related at all. So for a brief moment, they're like, oh my God, maybe we have this weird serial killer staging, robberies at homes, but killing random people. Maybe, but it turns out probably not. Rewinding back a little bit to the day after Charlie's murder, police get a phone call from an unknown man. This call was made to the Burbank Police Department. The caller said that he had information about that one deputy who was killed last night. The dispatcher who took the call said, okay, let me get you in touch with a detective working on that case. So they got him connected to that detective. The guy on the phone is like, hey, I have information. I may know who did this. But here's one thing though. I don't want to be recorded. Is this call being recorded? The detective says, because he has to be honest, yes, you are being recorded. And so he's like, well, I can't have that. I don't want people hearing my voice. I don't want people knowing who I am. And so he's like, the detective's like, well, you don't have to, you can be anonymous, but also, if you want to, you can call my office, because my office it's not being recorded. So do you want to do that? The guy very apprehensively said, fine, I guess I can call you back. The detective gives the guy his personal office phone number. He says, give me 2 minutes. I'm going to get back to my office and then call. So they hang up the call. The detective goes back to his office. He sits, he waits, he waits, he waits. A call never comes back in. They had no way of knowing or tracing where this phone call came from. They have no idea who this man was. To them, it sounded genuine. It sounded like this man truly did know something. He just didn't seem like a kook, like a crazy person providing some random tip. It sounded like he was genuinely concerned or afraid that someone might hear his voice and know who he is. And it's just, he never called back. And even to this day, this is decades ago. So 7 years after the murder took place, the Los Angeles police and sheriff's departments, they got in touch with the show Unsolved Mysteries. They're like, listen, can you please, air this case on the show? Because they were hoping that the guy would see it and call back after 7 years. Maybe he had a change of heart. He didn't. He never called back even after that. They played a recreation of his call on the episode, but they didn't share his voice, his actual call, just because, out of respect for him, because he genuinely seemed scared or concerned. But it never kicked back anything. It never brought any more information from this unknown man. It didn't present any more tips from other people. They didn't get anything. Now, apparently, at some point in the late 90s, investigators got some pretty substantial tips on his murder. And these were substantial enough that it led them to a potential suspect. The DA at the time said, you haven't given me any actual evidence or proof that whoever this is, because I don't know who this person's name is. Me personally, I don't know. They don't have his name listed. Or her name, but they said there is just insufficient evidence, so we can't lay charges on this person. You have to find more. You need to find something for us to go forward. And so they never found that extra information. They never found that extra evidence. So whoever this person was, whoever this tip came from, it led to this unknown person, it led to nothing. Because that person never got charged, that person never got arrested. No one has been arrested in the murder of Charlie Anderson. They really haven't even really formally named a suspect. I mean, they did say that Beth at one point was a person of interest, borderline suspect, but they never had anything to prove it. And they never really showed motive as to why she would have done it. I mean, I agree. The story sounds a little crazy that, she was outside when a gunshot rang out in the house and she didn't see or hear anything. It is a little strange, but it's not impossible that the killer would have just left out the back of the house, hopped over a fence. It's after midnight. No one's really awake. No one's going to see anything. So it's very easy to know or understand how that person got away unseen. But it sounds like the family and even police kind of believe that this was a personal murder, that this was someone who targeted Charlie. Nothing was stolen. Was that because he interrupted the burglary and the burglar got scared, shot him, and then took off and wasn't able to steal anything because he was caught in the act? Maybe. That's also possible. It's just a lot of nothing. There's a lot of nothingness to this, unfortunately. And that's where it stands. But, as we always say in cases like this, somebody somewhere out there knows the truth. Perhaps that someone is you. Jesus, this is what, 35, 36 years later? So whoever did this could be dead or could be in their 60s, maybe mid-50s. They could still very well must be alive and still out there somewhere. Maybe they talked. Maybe they told someone. Who is the man who called? If you are out there still, call anonymously. You don't have to say who you are. You just gotta say what you know. You gotta point police in the right direction. You gotta help catch this person, this killer. This is a killer. This is a murderer. He killed a father, a husband. He killed a cop. He ended a life. So if you have any information about the murder of Deputy Charlie Anderson, please contact the Burbank Police Department at 818-238-3279. You can report your information anonymously, like I said, and the tiniest detail can literally solve this entire thing. So please help Charlie Anderson and his remaining family find the justice he rightfully deserves. But that is it for this case. True crime, a Rooney Dooney Dingleberry Dongs. Hope you found it interesting. As usual, like always, please subscribe, give the video a like, follow me over on TikTok, join the Discord, recommend a case to me, emails listed below. A poof, paf, poof, paf, paf, poof. Fucking stupid things I say. Okay. Anyway, I want to leave you with this age-old question that I have finally figured out the answer to. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? It's 12.7. 12.7 wood. That's exactly how much. That's exactly how goddamn much. Now shut up about it. The answer is there. Unsolved mystery solved. 12.7 woods. It's what a Chuck would. Chuck Lowry. Who was that game show host? The Chuck guy. He was like a weird anti-vaxxer. And then Chuck. Where am I going with this? This is very awkward. How long are you gonna wait for? I don't know.